Okay, welcome to the CKAF 2026 Festival Grants Information Session. We're really excited to have you all here today, and we can just go through a quick overview of what we're talking about today. So first off, as I mentioned, we are recording this session. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to use the raise hand function to ask a question. You can also ask the question in the chat, or you can direct message BC Gory if you don't want to ask that question publicly. We have a lot of information that we're going through today, so I will skim over some of it, but we will be posting both the slide deck and the recording of this session. And then when we get to the Q&A portion, we're going to turn the recording off so that you can ask your questions anonymously. And then we will kind of make a report, an anonymized report of generally what questions were asked and what the responses are. But before we get into that, I'd just like to introduce the KAC staff and let you know who's here today. So I am, if we can change the slide, please. So I am Nicole Daniels. I'm the Executive Director of the KAC. We also have Shamara Peart, who is our Grants Administrator. A lot of you may have also interacted with Catherine Dion, who's our Grants and Administrative Assistant, although she's not here at this meeting today. And then we have BC Gory, our Program and Communications Coordinator. BC is managing the Zoom meeting. So again, if you have any questions, you can direct message BC if you want to ask them anonymously, or if you're having any issues with the Zoom meeting, feel free to just message BC. So the CKAF program provides grants to local arts organizations, artists, and collectives to foster creativity at all levels and enrich how Kingston residents experience and engage with the arts. The program is administered by the KAC on behalf of the City of Kingston, and it has been since its inception in 2007. It's a mechanism for the city to invest in the arts, and through the CKAF, the city has invested over $10.3 million to date. In 2025, the city completed a review of the program to determine how it can continue to best support the arts in Kingston. The new CKAF framework was developed in response to that review, and in 2026, we are launching 4 grant streams. So currently, we are accepting applications to operating grants and festival grants, and then in the late summer, we'll open applications for project grants and creation and development grants. Moving on to the goals and priorities. Again, I'm not going to read everything about these, but they are posted on the guidelines and our website and in the slide deck. But an overview of the goals and priorities are: number 1, increase access and inclusivity, support Kingston artists, ensure artists receive professional opportunity. Support Kingston artists, foster creativity and community engagement, build capacity and resiliency, and encourage collaboration and partnerships. I went on automatic mode there and started reading everything, which I said I wasn't going to do. Okay, so we've updated our grant application supports this year as part of our commitment to indigenization, inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. We strive to make our granting processes more accessible wherever possible. So applicants with accessibility needs are encouraged to contact KAC staff as early in the application period as possible to request accommodations for your grant application. Of course, we will consider accommodations requests at any point in the process, but just because some things take a while to implement, we do encourage you to contact us as soon as possible. The supports we can provide, in addition to providing ASL interpretation at all of our public CKAF information sessions, we also facilitate online or in-person meetings. We can provide access notes for in-person meetings, which detail all of the accessibility features of the KAC office space and the TET Center, the facility that we're located in, including things like parking, restrooms, spacing of doorways, and things like that. And we can provide ASL interpretation for virtual meetings. We're also, of course, open to providing ASL interpretation for in-person meetings, but just because it can be challenging to secure interpreters on short notice, we typically keep that to virtual meetings. New this year, we are also providing Financial support of up to $500 for grant writing services for applicants who are deaf, living with a disability, illiterate, or who do not have a working proficiency in English. This specific support has to be requested no later than next Thursday, April 23rd, and it has to be approved by KAC, and there's some more details on how that works in the grant guidelines. We can also provide recommendations for services and tools that can be of use to artists with accessibility needs. And where there are gaps in our knowledge, we're happy to do research to try to find the correct tools. And alternate forms of support, including alternative submission methods for components of an application, can also be considered upon request. So getting into CKAF Festival grants, these are annual grants to support the production, presentation, and operations of arts festivals that have a citywide impact. We define a festival as a concentrated collection of arts activities with a common theme. Festivals funded through this program have to have a primary focus on the arts and can be devoted to one or more artistic disciplines. As you know, applications are now open. The deadline to book a consultation, which I'll talk about in a moment, is next Thursday, April 23rd. Applications are due on May 7th, and we anticipate results in July or August. So this program has two categories based on years of operation and festival history. So first off, we have emerging festivals. So these are grants for emerging arts festivals run by incorporated nonprofit organizations or collectives. CKAF Festival grants awarded to applicants in the emerging festivals category are not guaranteed to be recurring. However, successful applicants in this category are encouraged to reapply in future years. So similar to if you have received a project grant in the past, you're welcome to apply year over year. It's just not guaranteed that they're going to be renewable. The established festivals category provides operational support for established festivals run by incorporated nonprofit organizations with a sustained history of festival delivery. These grants are usually expected to be renewable based on the assessment and decision-making provisions outlined in the framework. As mentioned, applications are due on Thursday, May 7th, and they have to be submitted via email to grants@artskingston.ca. If you're looking to apply as an established festival, you are required to book a consultation with KAC staff by next Thursday, April 23rd. So if you're considering this, even if you're not entirely sure if you're eligible, please reach out to us as soon as possible and we can book that consultation to assess your eligibility for this program. The funding period for emerging festivals is for festival activities occurring between September 2026 and December 2027. For established festivals, it covers your fiscal year ending in 2027, as well as festival activities occurring between September 2026 and December 2027. The grant amounts are also different for each category. So it's you can apply for between 10 and 20,000 as an emerging festival, or you can request between 10 and 55,000 as an established festival. To apply for a festival grant through CKAF, you have to meet all of the eligibility criteria outlined in the festival grant guidelines for your respective applicant type. So please note that there are two different sets of guidelines, one for emerging festivals and one for established festivals, as well as two different sets of applications for each type. So just make sure when you're reviewing that you have the correct guidelines and the correct application form. Both festivals have to take place in the city of Kingston. They have to have a defined period of no less than 1 day and no longer than 1 month. And they have to take place between that September 2026 to December 2027 window. In addition, for established festivals, only activities occurring outside of the festival, which serve to drive the organization's mandate, are acceptable. Both streams have to have a primary focus on the arts and meet the definition of a festival outlined in the guidelines, which I also read earlier. And they have to offer programming that is open and accessible to the broader public. So for example, we could not fund a festival that's only offered to your membership. It does have to be open and accessible to the public. And in addition, it has to include some programming that is offered free of charge or discounted, either for the broader public or for a designated priority group. So for example, if you had a partnership with a local organization that works with a certain priority group in the community and you offered free tickets through that partnership, that's something that may count. Okay, additional eligibility criteria is a little bit different for each category, and it's defined or organized into different categories under eligibility. So both have operations and mandate requirements as well as financial requirements. And for established festivals, there's the additional requirement of having an existing funding relationship with the city. So, and sorry, you'll notice that the emerging festivals content that's different is pink, and then the content that's different for established festivals is blue. So that's kind of your visual signal there. Okay, so going into operations and mandate for emerging festivals, you have to compensate artists and arts workers and demonstrate efforts to meet industry standard rates at minimum. And you have to meet the operations and mandate requirements for your respective application type as defined in the guidelines. So for collectives, this means that you consist of a group of 3 or more professional artists and or community members who have come together for the purpose of artistic creation and presentation in a collective artistic endeavor. Collectives are based on shared artistic input, workload, risks, and rewards. They are not legally incorporated. They have to have a majority of members who reside and or regularly work within the city of Kingston. And finally, you have to have a lead applicant who resides within the city of Kingston. That lead applicant is responsible for managing the grant funds, the application, and the reporting. For nonprofit organizations, you must be incorporated as a nonprofit organization or registered charity for a minimum of 1 year. If you're an organization situated within a multi-purpose institution, like a library, university, or museum, you have to clearly demonstrate your independence by being able to fulfill all eligibility requirements separately and distinctly from that multi-purpose organization. That includes having a fully segregated and itemized financial statement, as well as a board of directors or advisory body that is solely responsible for the organization. And your funding level will be determined based on need and maximizing the impact of municipal funding. In addition, you must be physically located and deliver programs and services within Kingston. So when we say physically located, we mean your head office and your incorporated address have to be within the city of Kingston. In addition, organizations registered in nearby areas, including First Nation or Indigenous communities, may be considered eligible at the discretion of the KAC in consultation with the city, provided the majority of festival activities occur within the city of Kingston. You also have to have a history of public programming, project delivery, and budget management, and you must be governed by a board of directors or other body responsible for the organization. Additionally, alternative structures may be considered to facilitate Indigenous agency, again, at the discretion of the KAC and the city. So if you think you might fall into that category, please reach out to us and we can assess. In terms of the financial eligibility criteria, you have to demonstrate additional funding and revenue sources. So that means that your CKAF funding request cannot account for 100% of your proposed budget. Your administrative costs can't exceed 20% of your total budget. So there are lines in the Emerging Festivals budget form for administrative staff and salaries and administrative and general expenses. So those two combined can't exceed 20% of the overall budget. And finally, you have to be in good standing with the city of Kingston and with other city grants. So meaning you've successfully completed your projects and submitted your final reports, and you don't have any outstanding invoices with any city departments. If you have an open project that isn't currently complete and your final report deadline is upcoming, that's okay. It's more about if you have an overdue report that you haven't submitted. Okay, additionally, you have to demonstrate responsible financial management, and the requirements there are different for nonprofits or collectives. So for nonprofits, you have to submit independently prepared financial statements for your 2024 to 2025 fiscal year. So that's your audited financial statements, review engagement report, or compilation statement, and they have to be signed by 2 board members. For collectives, we require 2 reference letters, which speak to your ability to execute the festival as proposed in the application. So this could include speaking to your history of public programming, project delivery, or budget management. Moving on to eligibility for established festivals, we have that additional criteria for having an existing funding relationship with the City of Kingston. So what that means is you have to either currently receive a CKAF operating grant or previously have received 2 or more CKAF project grants. And again, you do have to book a consultation with KAC staff to assess your eligibility. Okay, the operations and mandate requirements are very similar, so I'm only going to highlight the difference. The difference under this first category is that you have to be incorporated as a nonprofit organization or registered charity for a minimum of 2 years for established festivals. Again, emerging is just 1 year, established is 2 years. Moving on, again, a lot of the same criteria that I'm not going to go over again, but in addition, you have to have paid professional staff and leadership in both artistic and administrative roles. You also have to produce the festival annually and have a sustained festival programming and delivery over a minimum of 3 years. So as a reminder, you have to be incorporated for a minimum of 2 years and have a history of delivering the festival for a minimum of 3 years. So for example, if you delivered the festival previously as a collective and then you registered as a nonprofit, 3 iterations of the festival, 2 years as a nonprofit. And you also have to work for the benefit of the Kingston arts sector, its communities, audiences, and art forms. You also have to submit independently prepared financial statements signed by 2 board members. And I won't read each of these, but the type of statement required is different based on the grant request and the festival budget. That information is in the guidelines as well as posted in these slides, which we will share. And you have to demonstrate a range of revenue sources on an annual basis, including earned government and private sector revenues. I just want to note, I see a question in the chat. If the festival has ran for more than 3 years but has paused, does it qualify? It would qualify for emerging, but it would not qualify for established festivals. If you want to follow up about that, we can reassess over email, but that's my general instinct on that because it is a requirement that it's annual delivery. Okay. Additionally, your CKAF funding request can't exceed 30% of your revenue or expense totals reported from your last completed fiscal year. So in most cases, these will be fairly similar, but in the event that you have a much higher revenue than expenses or much higher expenses than revenue, we're looking at whichever number is lower. Okay. In terms of applications that are not eligible, festivals that are not primarily focused on the arts are not eligible for this grant stream, nor are commercial for-profit businesses and or festivals. Organizations or collectives that are based on fundraising or building awareness for a third party, like a charitable cause or political movement, or that are focused on religious practice or the goal to change religious belief are not eligible. And organizations or collectives that directly deliver curriculum-based education, such as a school, or which are based on the pursuit of a post-secondary diploma or degree. Finally, if you're already receiving funding from the City of Kingston through other sources, such as a different type of grant, like a heritage fund or service level agreement, you would not be eligible. And you can only receive funding through one CKAF grant stream annually. So if you receive a festival grant, you won't be able to apply for project grants or creation and development grants. If you have a grant from 2025 through CKAF, that's fine. Okay, in terms of eligible expenses and activities, sorry, it's late in the day for me and I'm stumbling over my words. Emerging festival expenses have to be directly related to the delivery of the festival. So expenses and activities that can be funded by festival grants include artist fees, and artist fees are a required expense for all CKAF grants, as well as travel and accommodations, production and technical costs, marketing, promotion, and audience development, administration, insurance, staffing, accessibility, security and policing, and volunteer program development and training. Ineligible expenses and activities for both categories include furthering a for-profit venture or advantaging a for-profit partner. Alcohol, it doesn't mean that your festival can't have alcohol at it, but CKAF funds cannot be put towards purchasing of alcohol or distribution of alcohol. Additionally, fundraising or recovering the costs of an applicant's financial deficits is ineligible, as well as programs or services delivered by an organization aligned with any political party or religious group. And then there's slightly different ineligible expenses for each category. So under emerging festivals, we have capital projects, major equipment purchases, paying for expenses that are not directly related to the delivery of the festival for which you're requesting funding, and paying for expenses incurred prior to September 2026. Under established festivals, we additionally have significant capital purposes such as purchase or renovations of buildings or major equipment. The submission process is that you have to submit your application via email. All of the documents should be attached in one email, either attached directly or as a zip folder. Your application will be considered incomplete and ineligible if you're missing any of the requirement documents or signatures, and additional documents will not be accepted. So for example, if you had a question on the application form and you attached a separate document to answer it, we will not be passing that along to the jury. Same with the budget. All of your budget notes have to be in the budget. We will not accept a separate document outlining your budget notes. And as a reminder, don't alter the forms in any way beyond filling out the designated fields. To the right is an overview of how you can label the files. This information is also in the guidelines. I won't go through all of it, but the ones that have multiple documents, so supplementary, for example, you can number them. So you can have supplementary 1, supplementary 2, and so on. Or if they're all in one file, you could go supplementary 1 through 5. Okay, we're going to be talking about all of the application components, but just to note that the application components are different for the two streams. As you can see, there are more requirements for established festivals, and then slightly different requirements for emerging or for collectives or nonprofits within the emerging festival stream. Okay, the applications are fillable PDF forms, and they have to be completed using Adobe Acrobat Reader, which you can download for free. There are distinct application forms for each applicant category. So there's an emerging festivals application and an established festivals application. Please be sure to download the correct one. The applications have to be signed, and just make sure that you complete everything before adding your digital signatures. For collectives, you have to have 3 collective members sign off on the application. And for nonprofits, you require 2 of your signing authorities. A couple extra notes about application forms. They are organized into sections aligned with the assessment criteria. And there is a maximum character count of 2,500 characters per question. That's a rather high character count. We just wanted to leave it somewhat open-ended in this first year of this program, but I don't encourage you to use the maximum character count for every question. There may be some questions where a shorter answer will suffice, and then some where you feel you need more room to explain. So just use your judgment on that. Under question 15, I just wanted to highlight that it does ask you to discuss plans for accumulated surpluses or deficits. This is relevant to the established festival stream. So we're looking at if you have an accumulated deficit, we want to see a deficit reduction plan. And if you have a significant accumulated surplus, we just want to see an explanation of why those funds exist, what they're used for, and what you plan to do with them. And then there's a current year report, again on the established form, and that's required only for current operating grant recipients. So if you're a new applicant, you don't need to fill out that section. The budget forms have to be completed and submitted as an Excel file. Please do not submit them in PDF form because the jury won't be able to navigate through them. Please also make sure that you don't alter the form in any way beyond filling out the required sections, and do not edit any of the automatic calculations. There is an instructions and definitions tab on the form that outlines examples for each line and tells you kind of how to navigate the form. and there's more columns in the established festival stream. So I'll just take a quick peek at what the form looks like. You can see you can insert your festival name at the top. This is the emerging form. There's a drop-down menu for funding status. And then there's just a budget column and then budget notes. So we do want to see budget notes for any lines that you're filling out. They can be fairly general, but we want some specificity without accounting for necessarily every single dollar, but a general breakdown of how funds are being spent. For example, if you had $10,000 allocated towards workshops and artist fees, and it would say 2,000 times 5 artists, just a breakdown like that. And you can see there is an instructions and definitions form. One thing to note is that your total revenues and your total expenses have to balance. So that means that they have to be the same number. Revenue minus expenses equals 0. We are looking for insurance has to be in there. And again, as I mentioned earlier, your administrative percentage can't exceed 20% of your total expenses. You are filling out columns C to E. Looks like I made a mistake there. It says F, but C to E. And you can kind of review those definitions for what we're looking for there. But again, just a reminder to provide budget notes explaining the details of all revenue and expense lines entered. Of course, if the line is blank, you don't need to provide us with details. And we do want to see some calculations there. Depending on what application you're using to open the form, those tabs might be at the bottom or the top, but just pay attention to the tabs on any of the Excel documents that you're filling out. There's also an in-kind support section for the emerging festival stream. And there's some examples there of how you could break that down. But basically, if there's any organization that is providing something like, for example, they're providing you the venue for free, you would put down the value of that in your in-kind section. It doesn't factor into the budget, but it does also show where some contributions with monetary value are being added. Okay. The established festivals budget is a little bit different. So we're looking for your budget from your previous year. So your confirmed actuals as outlined in your financial statements for the 2024 to 2025 year. And then we're looking at your current year, your 2025 to 2026 fiscal year, your confirmed actuals or most accurate and up-to-date projections, and then your request year, which is the 2026 to 2027 fiscal year. We want budget notes specifically for the request year, as well as the funding status for the request year. There is a column with, sorry, I should say, we're not using CKAF this year. We're using the budget forms instead. But if you are an organization that has been using CKAF, on the instructions and definitions page, there is a column that indicates the areas within CKAF where you can find those numbers. So if you've already completed that for OAC, you can use that for a quick reference. I won't go into more details here. I just want to note that there are, as I said, the budget notes are for your request year. But if there's any kind of significant variation between your current year and your request year, you might just want to add a note about that just to provide some clarification. Okay, and you can see there again, just that emphasizing navigating between tabs, and that's the, on the left there, the CKAF reference lines. There's also a surplus or deficit section where you can add adjustments. So if you had any interfund transfers, they can go there. And then the statement of financial position is only for your 2024 to 2025 year based on your financial statements. Moving on to supplementary material. So all applicants must submit 5 pieces of supplementary material to support your application. This can include images, text, video, or audio files that illustrate the artistic merit and impact of the organization or festival. Please refer to the relevant CKAF 2026 Festival Grant Guidelines for details, including acceptable file types, page counts, and time limits. Your supplementary material should illustrate the artistic merit and impact of your application. It should be relevant to your application, so past work can be submitted to demonstrate your artistic merit or style. They should be high quality and impactful, and again, submitted according to the festival grant guidelines. So there's certain file types that you can submit and limit. So I think it's no more than 5 pages combined for all text and no more than 10 minutes combined for all video or audio. And if you do have to submit something that's beyond that limit, just submit it with a timestamp so that we know, you want the jury to watch minute 1 to 3 of this video and so on. Okay, so for the Emerging Festivals stream, you are required to submit partnership letters from all confirmed community partners identified in question 14. The partnership letters should be attached to your application in PDF format. So it's the partner is writing it and giving it to you, and then you're sending it as part of your application package. It should confirm the partner's participation in the festival and outline their role. And they should be dated, signed, and submitted on the organization's letterhead, if applicable. For collectives applying as emerging festivals, you have to submit 2 reference letters from individuals who can speak to your ability to manage and successfully complete the project, and these should also be signed and dated and submitted as PDF ideally. Okay, so nonprofits applying as emerging festivals have to complete the board list form, which should be submitted as an Excel file. And then if you're applying as an established festival, it's a board and staff list form. The board and staff list form has tabs for both lists, and there's instructions for each on the respective tabs. And you should complete both lists in full and submit them as a single Excel file. As a general rule, any document you download as an Excel file or .xlsx should be submitted in that format. This is what they look like. Again, there's instructions there. I'm not gonna kind of get into the details, but we're happy to review them with you. And then the staff list, I just want to note, we have a recommended maximum of 50 words for key roles and responsibilities. That's quite long. You may not need that much space. And we anticipate that for organizations with a lot of staff, those descriptions might be shorter. Whereas if you're an organization with only a handful of staff, you may have longer descriptions per role because they're kind of operating in multiple departments. The statistics form is required for established festivals. Again, you have to complete it and submit it as an Excel file, and there are instructions and details on the form. There are reference lines for where you can find these details on CKAF if you are using CKAF, and it's just completing those cells in that box. There's a programming form for established festivals that includes both your current year program list and your request year program list, again, in the same document, using the tabs to navigate between them. And once again, please complete both lists in full and submit them as a single Excel file. We ask for no more than 25 words per cell. And under participating artists, I just wanted to note that you have to indicate each Kingston-based artist with an asterisk after their name. And if you have roles in your request year that are to be determined, you can just indicate that by having a TBD and then describing the role. And if they are reserved for Kingston-based artists, you can add the asterisk there. So for example, if you had a kind of main act slot, but then your opening act slot was reserved for a Kingston artist, you can indicate that with an asterisk. Okay, and that is what the form looks like. Okay, moving on to assessment criteria. Applications are assessed in 5 categories, and these have been updated under the new framework. So for emerging festivals, we have artistic merit, and for established festivals, we have artistic mandate. For both streams, we are also looking at artistic programming and service quality, impact and benefit to Kingston residents, and financial management and viability. And finally, under emerging festivals, we are looking at administration and viability, and then established festivals, we're looking at leadership, administration, and governance. Sorry, I was just checking how many slides I have left to make sure we have enough time. Okay, in preparation for adjudication, the jurors will go through each of the assessment criteria that I'll show to you next, and they score them on a scale of 1 to 5. and then we get into the jury meeting, we discuss, we rescore. That's a whole other process. So these are the criteria that they're looking at. So under artistic merit or artistic mandate, we're looking for a clearly defined purpose for emerging festivals that responds to a need in Kingston arts sector. Established festivals is similar, except that we're looking for a clearly defined mandate and purpose for the festival. We are also looking for clear commitments to equity in both. For emerging festivals, we're looking for clear commitments to equity in the festival mandate and goals. And for established festivals, it's in your mission, vision, and values. Artistic programming and service quality is the same criteria for both applicant types. So we're looking to see that your programming reflects the festival's mandate and mission, advances a particular discipline or practice, and is of a quality to merit public support. We want to see that artists reflect the diversity of Kingston and that the festival has inclusive practices to support Indigenous artists and artists from equity deserving communities. We are also looking for a commitment to hiring Kingston artists and compensating artists and employees at industry standard rates. This year, we're also looking for contribution to sector development, including opportunities for collaboration and cross-pollination between emerging and established artists and between Kingston artists and provincial, national, and international peers. And finally, we are looking to see demonstration of informed and respectful delivery of programming related to Indigenous and equity deserving groups. Under impact and benefit to Kingston residents, for both criteria or categories, we're looking for a commitment to developing and or engaging audiences and participants that reflect the diversity of Kingston. Accessibility plans and practices are in place to ensure access to participation and safety is prioritized. We want to see that the applicant, in the case of emerging festivals or organization for established, demonstrates efforts to ensure festival programming is impactful, distinct, and innovative in the context of Kingston's arts sector. We want to see that there are strong marketing and outreach plans, strategies, and initiatives in place, and that community engagement is demonstrated through support from local community partners, businesses, and a mix of for-profit and nonprofit partner organizations. Under emerging festivals, we also want to see the potential to attract audiences from within and beyond Kingston and to bring provincial or national recognition to Kingston's arts sector. For established festivals, we want to see that there is a returning, consistent, or growing participation in programs and the potential to attract audiences from beyond Kingston. Under financial management and viability, we are looking for strong financial management for emerging festivals, including a history of budget management for large-scale projects and strong financial health of the organization, if applicable. For established festivals, we are looking for strong financial health, including diverse revenue sources and achievable budgets in relation to programs, services, operations, and longer-term plans. And for both categories, we want to see realistic budget projections and appropriate balance of programming and administrative expenses with expenses aligned with revenues. And then there's an additional criteria point for established festivals. That is, there is a demonstrated need for an impact of city funding. And if applicable, appropriate plans are in place to reduce deficits and or utilize accumulated surpluses. Okay, for administration and viability for emerging festivals or leadership, administration, and governance for established festivals. In both, we want to see that the festival has a viable and well-resourced volunteer program and training for all staff and volunteers. For emerging festivals, we want to see that leadership has relevant experience, knowledge, and skills to manage the festival. And then same for established festivals, but it's to manage the organization and contribute to the advancement of the arts sector. Under established, we also have the additional criteria that the organization has a strong board or governing body that is diverse, has strong recruitment practices, and offers a range of skills and expertise to advance the organization's mission. And finally, for both categories, we want to see a demonstrated commitment to the well-being of staff and volunteers, including having defined policies and practices in place to ensure a healthy workplace culture. Before we move on to Q&A, I just want to quickly touch on AI. So we do have this statement written in our guidelines that essentially notes that we recognize that AI tools can be leveraged as an accessibility tool and help applicants navigate the grant writing process. So we do understand that some folks may be using this to compose their written materials. However, the submission of supplementary materials, so your images, audio, or video, cannot be generated by AI. You have to ensure that all information included in your grant application is true and accurate. You will be signing these applications to confirm that. So we just want to caution applicants, if you are utilizing AI for your writing process, to just consider the potential risks, which can include the duplication of written materials amongst applicants. So you don't want your application to sound very similar to someone else's application because you're both using ChatGPT, for example. You also want to make sure that the information is accurate. So, some of these resources like ChatGPT will at times insert false numbers, for example. We have seen things like that. So you just want to make sure that everything included there is still accurate and true and yours. And just make sure you're reviewing everything thoroughly. We also want to caution you to consider data security. So your data, anything that you're putting into those platforms is not necessarily secure. So just be careful about that and don't include any kind of personal information. And finally, intellectual property concerns. So again, just making sure that everything you're writing is actually your information, and that if you are using those tools, it's to define your writing, not to generate your ideas. I also would say, if you want to learn more about this, the Canada Council for the Arts has an AI policy and statement on their website, and it goes into more detail about a lot of this. It's kind of specific to their grant application processes, but there is a lot of kind of helpful detail in there. So I would encourage folks to look at that if you're looking to learn more about the risks surrounding AI. Okay, and with that, thank you for bearing with me as we kind of zoomed through a ton of information. Of course, you are more than welcome, and we encourage all CKAF applicants to reach out to us to book a meeting, whether or not you require a consultation. Even if you're applying as an emerging festival, you can meet with us to just talk about your application, ask us questions. We are more than happy to help. And then with that, we will turn off the recording to go into the Q&A portion, and we will be taking notes without identifying anyone about the general types of questions that are coming up, and then we will kind of include that on the website alongside the recording. But we will end the recording now so that you can ask your questions without